Hey everyone, and welcome to my 2023 NFL mock draft. I'm really excited for this upcoming draft. Few storylines to follow. I don't know. I feel like it's just all over the place. There's not a lot of concrete picks that we know of, so I'm gonna do my best to guess what's gonna happen in the first round. I'm not doing any trades just because I know they're obviously gonna happen, but it's kind of unpredictable which spots those are gonna happen at, and specifically what teams are gonna move up. Obviously, I could do hypothetical, but I'm just gonna pick for every team sitting with their current pick. But I am gonna kind of note if it's a pick that's maybe up in the air and could be traded or should be traded, just based off of how the board is going. So we're gonna hop in. I'm using PFF's NFL mock draft simulator. I recommend it if you want to do mock drafts leading into the NFL mock or into the NFL draft season. But yeah, so here we are. The Carolina Panthers are on the clock with the first pick. And they gave up a lot to get this first pick, but it's kind of obvious they're going to take that franchise quarterback, whoever that is. We don't know that yet, but I do think it will be Bryce Young. Uh, I think he's the QB1 in this draft. He has been for a while, and nobody's made like significant strides to be over him. Size is in question, that's obvious, but he has really good playmaking ability, comes from a good school, and I don't know. I just feel like if you're going to make that big trade to trade up, you're going to take the guy who has the chance to be just, a generational talent from this draft. And I think that's Bryce Young. And now we have Houston at number two. And, for a while, it was CJ Stroud kind of mocked to the Panthers at first, and I think in that situation they probably would take Bryce Young at number two. But between Stroud and Levis and Richardson, I feel like maybe the Texans aren't 100% that that's the quarterback, that's their guy. So they're gonna take Will Anderson Jr. here with the second overall pick. He's gonna be a really good addition to that defense. He's a can't go wrong type pick. He's gonna produce in the NFL, I believe. Everything that's been said about him has been good things, just his work ethic and his character and all that stuff. And I think D'Amico Ryan's is going to be really excited with the first pick in his kind of tenure. So yeah, and pick number two, that could be a pick that they do trade, depending on if they aren't sold with any of the defensive guys or any of the quarterbacks other than Bryce Young. And then number three, I think the Cardinals is probably where we could see someone trade up for a quarterback. But in this situation, I don't have any trades, and I'm going to take a guy who's gaining a lot of hype. I think he could go as high as number two, and that's Tyree Wilson, edge from Texas Tech. He's 6'6", 270 pounds. He's just got really insane potential. And, Arizona's in no position to, want to compete right away. So they can kind of take their time with this prospect. I just really think, he could be a really, really good producer in the league, a really good player one day. Maybe has a less polished game than Will Anderson right now. He's kind of just, when you're that young and that size, you still don't know what to do with it yet. So under the right coach, under the right coordinators, I think Tyree Wilson will produce in the NFL. And then next, we have the next quarterback being taken off the board. Indianapolis. They have their fair share of guys that they could take here, but I'm gonna have them taking a guy who's gaining a lot of hype around the draft. And I know you guys might not like this pick, but I just feel like it's the Colts pick to make here. We have Will Levis. He's gaining a lot of hype, like I mentioned. He has a really good arm, on film at least in his pro day and things like that. It looks like a really clean throwing motion, and I believe that he could translate to the NFL pretty well. He could be, potentially the best week one starter out of the group, maybe just because of his age. But I do think that they're going to go here, and I do think they're going to go quarterback regardless of who it is. But yeah, I have them taking Will Levis. And then that leaves the Seahawks here. We have them taking a guy who has a little bit of controversy around him, but I think that his talent is just, unquestioned, and that's Jalen Carter. You could argue he's the best player in the draft. Obviously, there's the off the field issues there, but they have a really solid system there in Seattle, so I don't think that he would come into Seattle and, his character would be a problem or anything like that. I think he's a guy that likes football and, getting drafted still a top five pick. Without those issues, he could probably go number one, number two, number three, but he lands here at five. And he could slide. I think the lowest he could go is to Chicago, Atlanta area. I think he doesn't make it out of the top, or I think he stays in the top 10 for sure. And then next we have the Detroit Lions. They traded away Jeff Okuda, a guy they took third overall in 2020, a cornerback. Have them taking cornerback again. This guy really showed out at the combine. My notes on him. Yeah, I just great combine, and he's not to say consensus, but I feel like a lot of people's CB1 in this draft. So I have them going that direction. And then this Raiders pick is really going to depend on a lot of things. They could be a team that trades up to three if they really want a quarterback. But they did take Jimmy Garoppolo, or they did sign Jimmy Garoppolo in the offseason. So he's the short term solution. But I still think, if they're looking at CJ Stroud at pick seven, I don't think they're going to pass up on it. He's going to play behind Garoppolo for however many games, whether it's this season or next season he comes in. I think he's the QB of the future. And yeah, I think they're really happy with that. I think they could go corner. They have lots of needs to address, but when CJ Stroud makes it to seven, and I do think a lot of people have him as the second best or best quarterback in the draft, you're going to take him with that pick. And then next we have Atlanta. Again, this is a pick where I could really see a trade happening. Um, I just believe that, they're kind of looking at who's left on the board, and, there's a couple guys they like, maybe they want to take, but there's just, they can get more value if they trade back a few picks if someone really wants to come in here and take, Anthony Richardson, for example. But I do have them sticking with their pick. And I'm going to have to scroll down a bit because PFF doesn't have him, super high graded. But this is a crazy edge class. And this guy is just a big play kind of guy. He, didn't play as many snaps at Iowa, but when he did play, he was just, an immovable force. He's just a dominant big play guy on the outside, and I really think he's gonna uh, really elevate this Atlanta defense, which added Calais Campbell, which added Jesse Bates. I really like what they did, and I think Atlanta could, fight for that NFC South with, a well constructed team when it comes, and depending on how Desmond Ritter plays, they could maybe go QB as well. But I think they've already named Desmond Ritter their Week 1 starter. I think they're going to try it out with him. But yeah, I have them going Lucas Van Ness. Next, we have Chicago. This is another pick where I could see a trade possibly happening because they've already moved back from 1 to 9. And again, if they don't like any of the guys here so much, they can get, more draft capital. But I do have them taking who a lot of people think is the best tackle in this draft, and that's Paris Johnson. And he's just going to be able to start right away for the Chicago team. He played, I believe, with Justin Fields at Ohio State, so a little bit of chemistry there, a little bit of familiarity. This Chicago Bears team, I'm liking what they did, obviously trading down to number 9. They're in the stages of a rebuild around Justin Fields. Hopefully, he's that guy. I don't see them taking quarterback at all. But yeah, they're going to take Paris Johnson here. And then this is probably maybe the pick that I could see trade back the most, especially if Anthony Richardson is on the board here. I like this to be a pick just because the Eagles already have another first round pick. They can get, assets, more draft capital. They traded a first round pick for AJ Brown, just a season ago. But yeah, I think they could trade back. I think they could take Bijan. I also have Bijan watch. I've trade watch, Bijan watch for some of these guys. I think they could take Bijan here because he could just step right in and add to what was one of the best offenses in the NFL last season. Obviously, just lost in the Super Bowl with Bijan. Maybe that's a different story. Obviously, Miles Sanders had a great season, not a great Super Bowl though. But I do have them sticking with this pick. And their secondary is good. They have Darius Slay and Bradbury, but it's a little bit aging. And I have them taking, a really good, potentially best player available here in Devin Witherspoon. And he can just learn behind them. And, their secondary wasn't so great in that Super Bowl. So getting a guy like this could really help their franchise. And then now I have the Anthony Richardson slide ending because there's no way that the Titans would pass on him. I don't think they would. I think they could trade up to 10. I think they could be a team that trades up because reports have come out that they're just kind of given up on Malik Willis only a year after drafting him. And I don't blame them. Obviously, he wasn't ready for the NFL last year, but when he did play, he wasn't anything impressive. And Anthony Richardson is kind of just everything Malik Willis is, but a million times better. Uh, Nothing against Malik Willis, but I have the Tennessee Titans taking the fourth quarterback in the first 11 picks. Uh, the Texans are probably mad here because if they take Will Anderson and then are able to get Anthony Richardson at 12, they're going to be running away from this draft thinking they won it, no matter what they did in, day 2 and day 3. But I have them sticking with this pick and taking the best receiver. I think in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinions, in Jackson Smith and Jigba. He was injured last season, so wasn't as crazy as he was, 2 seasons ago. But I think he did enough that year. We saw Jamar Chase take a year off before he came into the league, and we've seen how good he's been. I'm not saying Smith and Jigba's any Jamar Chase, but I think he's the best wide receiver in this draft. And this is kind of the range where we start to see receivers, unless they're a generational guy, get taken in drafts in recent years. And they go defense in with their first pick, and then with their second pick, they get the top receiver to help. I believe they might be holding out for Caleb Williams, but I don't think D'Amico Ryan's with the talent that's kind of spread out on this Texans roster. I don't believe that they're good enough to get Caleb Williams next year. So we'll see. Maybe they trust Davis Mills. Who knows? But next we have the Green Bay Packers actually, because with the Aaron Rodgers trade, they've moved up 2 picks. But I have them taking the first tight end in the draft, and this could be a lot of people. It could be Michael Mayer, but I am going to go with PFF's top rate guy just because I think he's potentially the most consistent receiving threat of this tight end group, and that's what kind of Green Bay needs because they lose Robert Tunyon. I think they lose Mercedes Lewis. Um, yeah, so they need to address that and give Jordan Love some weapons, and I think Dalton Kincaid will really help their attack. And I don't think they go receiver, maybe, but they spent some high picks on receiver last year in Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, so I don't know what they do there. And next we have New England. This is another Bijan watch team. I could see them fully going Bijan just because we know how much they love the run game, and he's the best running back we've seen probably since Saquon Barkley come in to the league. But I do have them taking the tackle from Northwestern, Peter Skoronsky. He's just a guy that fights in the trenches, and I think it's a good fit with New England. And I'm gonna go back to back tackles here because the Jets. Say what you will about them, but they kind of have depth at a lot of positions. But I do think just shoring up that offensive line is going to be what's best for Aaron Rodgers coming in and for Brees Hall coming off of an ACL tear. But I'm gonna have them going Broderick Jones from Georgia, just a solid tackle. I think probably the best tackle remaining on the board, so that's where they go. Now we have Washington. I don't really know where they're gonna go. Um, I have them taking cornerback, which a lot of people have mocked. I just think maybe addressing that secondary. I can't think of any standouts on this secondary. Uh, but I'm gonna have them going Deontay Banks from Maryland, kind of a hometown guy. Maryland to Washington D.C. Not very far, but yeah. So I have them going Deontay Banks. Yeah, he's just a great athlete. He had a 4.35 in the 40-yard dash, so he's very fast. And yeah, I think it's a good pick for the Washington Commanders here. And like we had back to back tackles at 14 15, I'm going to have back to back corners with 16 17. And we're going to have Joey Porter Jr. going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think a lot of people want to see this happen. I wouldn't say myself included. I'm not a Steelers guy, but he's just the best press corner in the draft of these corners. It's a really good edge and a really good corner draft, I think. But yeah, Joey Porter Jr. is their guy here, and then obviously that family bloodline with his dad. And then we have the Lions who took corner, and I think they're going to stick with defense. I like the Lions offense enough to not have to spend huge picks on it. It says team needs as a receiver, but Amon-Ra St. Brown is pretty solid. And I just like the group that they have there. They can obviously go receiver later in the draft. I'm going to have them still taking defense here and have them taking Kalijah Cansey. Kalijah Cansey, he's just got a quick first step, gets to the quarterback, lots of pressures at Pittsburgh, at Pitt. I don't think anybody calls them Pittsburgh. At Pitt, but yeah, and he's just going to add to this Lions defense. They get a great corner, they get a great defensive interior guy, pair him with Hutchinson and Anzalone, other guys on that defense. I think the Lions are probably I think they are the favorites, odds wise, to win the NFC North, but I really think they are the favorites. I think Minnesota probably takes a little bit of a step back, and Detroit, they if they were playing like they did in the second half of the season last year, the whole season, they probably win 10 games, in my opinion, 10 to 11. So next year, I'm expecting big things from Dan Campbell's squad. And then next we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is a QB watch, kind of. They could take Hendon Hooker here. Will Levis could slide here. I had him going there in like my mock draft from like a month ago, but I've obviously redone it with news that has come out around the draft. But I have them just bolstering their secondary and taking Brian Branch. Can't really go wrong with that pick. He's got great mechanics and he's just the top safety in this draft. They're looking to upgrade their defense. Quarterback, they're going to go with Kyle Trask this year. I think if they had a higher pick, maybe they're a team to trade up, get like an Anthony Richardson, go from Florida to Tampa. But yeah, I think they're going to stick here and take Brian Branch in this situation. And then we have the Seahawks who took Jalen Carter with their top pick. So I could see them going a multitude of ways, but I'm going to have them just taking the best interior offensive lineman, and that's Osiris Torrance, in my opinion, from Florida. Not a lot to say about him. I just think he's the best interior offensive lineman in the draft, and it's a position of need. That's where they go. Uh, the Miami Dolphins have their pick forfeited because of the Sean Payton situation, which didn't even end up working out because now Brady's retired and Sean Payton's in Denver. So they don't get their pick here. Next, we move to the Los Angeles Chargers. And it's crazy to believe just how some drafts receivers can go like that, like back to back to back. But, it's pick 21 and we've only had one taken. I think it's about time we take another. Give Justin Herbert, not Justin Fields, just a pure deep threat. They have Mike Williams and Keenan Allen who are solid guys. Mike Williams can be a good deep threat. He's a vertical threat as well. But Zay Flowers is just speed, speed, speed is, what scouts have said about him. And I fully agree. I think he's going to be a great weapon to add to there. Baltimore Ravens. Now, I think they could go lots of ways here. I think they could take Bijan as well. Maybe that's a reason to entice Lamar to come back. Now, the situation from a month ago, not so great, but now you're coming out of the draft, you signed Odell, you have Bijan, maybe Lamar wants to come back and play for you. And, with Bijan, Odell, and Lamar and the defense that they do have, that could be a really scary team. But, they really do prioritize defense. They lost Calais Campbell. And I think with Nolan Smith still on the board here, they're going to be super happy. I don't think he makes it all the way here because trades will happen, causing him to probably go earlier than this. He's just a great prospect. Had a really insane combine. He ran a 4.39, and he's just a three down solid player. So I'm gonna have the Baltimore Ravens taking Nolan Smith. A lot of people are gonna agree with me on this pick, at least from mock drafts I've seen. I think this is probably where we could see the fifth quarterback taken off the board, and I'm gonna have the Minnesota Vikings going Hendon Hooker. I think Hendon Hooker is very underrated. A lot of people have him, as high as the third best quarterback in the draft over Levis and Richardson. I don't think he's there fully, but I don't think Kirk Cousins is the long term solution. He's probably got another year or two, and that's perfect because Hendon Hooker probably needs a year or two behind a veteran guy like Kirk, just to see things, feel things out. They took a quarterback a few years ago, and they've since released him. So I think that's where they go with this direction. Obviously, a lot of good guys still on the board, but I think, from what I've been seeing in mock drafts, I like that pick. And then the Panthers, or not the Panthers, looks like the Panthers, the Jaguars are going to take Miles Murphy out of Clemson, just to pair alongside, on the other side of Trayvon Walker. Very similar players, just in terms of, their freakability and, their explosiveness, and their potential as prospects. And, Clemson guy, Trevor Lawrence went to Clemson. Travis Etienne went to Clemson. So I just like Miles Murphy stepping in there, and they're going to be happy that they got him at 24. And like I said, receivers can start to, go in bunches. We're gonna have the third receiver taken off the board here. Jordan Addison going to the New York Giants. Some people have him as the best receiver in the draft. Not a lot because a lot of people are high on Smith and Jigba leading towards the draft. And then kind of Zay Flowers as a positional thing with, just that speed ability. But Jordan Addison is a really good complete guy. And I think he's the best wide receiver available. And, the Giants really need receiver, I believe. They could obviously go day two, day three, and they have some guys there, Slayton and do they still have or Isaiah Hodgins now they have, and Sterling Shepard. I'm not sure if they still have. I'm sure they do. But taking Jordan Addison here, solidifies that offense as, pretty good. They're giving Daniel Jones all the tools to succeed, and they already have a solid defense. So I like the pick for the Giants. And then finally, the Bijan slide ends because Jerry Jones is going to be salivating at the fact that Bijan is still there. He went to Texas. He's going to be a Cowboy according to my mock draft, and he's just best player available at this point. They lose Ezekiel Elliott. Tony Pollard, we don't know if he's a three down back. He's, a great talent, and, in quantities, he can be really good. But now you got Bijan, another workhorse kind of guy, and I like the fit going to Dallas. Next, we have the Bills, and it says our needs as defense, but I feel like I've trusted what we do in day two with defense. I don't want to take linebacker because I don't trust these linebackers so much to take them in the first round. Obviously, we lose Tremaine Edmonds. We need to fill that position somehow. But I just have us solidifying, our offensive line a little more and taking the second best interior offensive line in the draft, in my opinion, and Steve Avila from TCU. He's just, a good physical guy, and he's going to help us really establish our run game, which we've been trying to do for so many years. But now I believe with James Cook as the lead guy, we probably take another one later in the draft. But now with Devin Singletary out of the picture, I think Steve Avila is the guy we go with there. And then next we have the Cincinnati Bengals, and it's a really good tight end draft. Again, I could see them taking a guy like Michael Mayer, but reports have come out that they're really confident in Irv Smith being that top receiving tight end. I do still think it is a position of need. So is O line in a way, just because sometimes that can be a storyline. And Darnell Washington, I think, is both receiving and physical threat, but just a really good guy to get there. Again, freak athlete is a way to describe him. And then another good corner getting taken off the board here with Emmanuel Forbes, taken by the Saints. He's just, really good athlete, ran a 4.35, and then he had 14 interceptions in college. So, a big play guy at a Mississippi State. I really like the pick for them here. And then next, we have the second running back taken. Again, I can see them taking Bijan at 10, but I think that, taking a guy like Devin Witherspoon and then still getting a running back at pick 30, the second best one in the draft in Jameer Gibbs, that's where I have the Eagles going. I just really like it for him. Surround, Jalen Hurts. He's both a receiving and, running threat, and I really like that for them. And then lastly, the last pick of the first round, I'm going to have the Kansas City Chiefs taking a defensive interior guy. He's just 320 plus pounds, just a pure nose tackle. They lost Frank Clark, I believe, so they're going to want to improve that defensive line. Complement Chris Jones. And yeah, so here's my mock draft. And then yeah, just to summarize and quickly run through it, we have Bryce Young to the Panthers at 1, Will Anderson Jr. to the Texans at 2, Tyree Wilson to the Cardinals at 3, Will Levis at 4 to the Colts, Jalen Carter at 5 to the Seahawks, Christian Gonzalez to the Lions at 6, CJ Stroud at 7 to the Raiders, Lucas Van Ness pick 8 to the Falcons, Paris Johnson Jr. pick 9 to the Bears, Devin Witherspoon pick 10 to the Eagles, and then Anthony Richardson. I think Titans fans are going to be really happy about this, similar to the Justin Fields to the Bears situation, where they kind of get him outside of the top 10, slides a bit. It's just a really exciting player, Anthony Richardson. I'm excited to see what he does in the league, and they like to run the ball, so he'll be good there. Jackson Smith and Jigba pick 12 to the Texans. Dalton Kincaid pick 13 to the Green Bay Packers. Peter Skoronski pick 14 to the Patriots. Roderick Jones pick 15 to the Jets. Deontay Banks picked 16 to the Commanders. Joey Porter Jr. pick 17 to the Steelers. The Lions take Kalijah Cansey at pick 18. Brian Branch to the Buccaneers. That's a alliteration. Brian Branch Buccaneers pick 19. Osiris Torrance pick 20 to the Seahawks. 21. The Chargers grab their speed guy in Zay Flowers. The slide stops because I think he's top 15 prospect in this draft. He's got my name, Nolan Smith to the Ravens at 22. The fifth QB taken off the board, Hendon Hooker at 23 to the Vikings. Miles Murphy to the Jags. Jordan Addison to the Giants. Bijan goes to the Cowboys. I think, the media will kind of go crazy over that if it happens. The Bills just kind of going solid, taking Steve Avila. Darnell Washington to the Bengals. Emmanuel Forbes to the Saints. Jameer Gibbs to the Eagles. And then the last pick of the first round again was Mozzie Smith to the Kansas City Chiefs. So thanks, guys, for watching my mock draft. I hope you guys enjoy the draft tomorrow. It's going to be really exciting. I guess today it's probably going to come out on Thursday. The draft is one of my favorite events of the year. So if you're a really big draft fan too, enjoy. And yeah, I hope you enjoy my mock draft.